Today I'm going to be talking about putting, and I think that this is probably one of the most important parts of the game. If you want to score well, you can throw the disc as well as you want, but if you're not putting it in the basket, then it's not going to work very well. So I think the number one thing about putting is the mental, like the mental awareness about when you get on the green and what's going on when you step into a putt, whether it's low or just your local C tier or local pop-up league to big tournaments. And I think the main thing is one thing I really like to talk about is giving up control to gain control. I think one of the main reasons a lot of people miss putts is because they're worried about missing. Whether you want to call that being scared, you're anxious, whatever it is, you're worried about missing the putt. So one of the biggest things mentally, and it's easy to talk about and it's hard to execute, is to go up to the putt and understand everything that can happen, bogey, roll away, whether there's water, accept the consequences for your miss, because if you're worried about missing, you're just going to miss. So accept your consequences, move past them, that way you can put your best foot forward into making that putt. Because if you're going to miss, you're already going to miss. You might as well just, get rid of that fear and put the best foot forward into making the putt. That way you're not hitting lip, rolling, getting frustrated, So just make peace with, the damage that could be done with the miss, and then, go forward from there. The next thing,
don't worry about the comebacker. Is that what you're saying, pretty much?
Play your own game.
When it comes to my mentality on that, I'm making every putt. So when I miss a putt, I've already made my mind up that I'm making the next putt. Even if I miss that one, I'm already my mind's made up on making the next one. So that's kind of the mentality you want to take into it. Because as soon as you start thinking, oh, now I got that comebacker, it's just it can build really quickly and snowball mentally. I know that better than. The next thing is, putting isn't really a swing. A lot of players, if you were to step up to putt, this is what you would see, right? You'd see somebody swinging their arm, getting ready to throw the disc. Now, this is wrong in a lot of ways. Maybe not wrong, but it's difficult to control, because when you have this motion, you have your elbow right here. Here's the hinge you have to control. You have your wrist. There's your second hinge, plus your fingers. You have to keep your mind in check. There's a lot of moving parts when you're swinging through your putt like this. Now, I can take my hand from the center of my chest and I can repeat this motion over and over. It's very easy and it's very repeatable. It's not very complicated. It's not a swing, it's a jab. And so when I'm coming down, I'm not swinging my arm, I'm gathering. Just like if I was to throw in an X step, when I come here, everything's gathered. Everything comes in, it's all coiled here. You guys can see, everything's coiled here, and then I can release. It's the same with the putt. When you're coming down, you're not swinging down, you're pulling it in and getting all your energy and everything in this base area right here, so you can push up and expand and let everything out and forward and use the correct inertia. Because timing's off. If you come forward and your hand's late, putt's not going to work. So it has to all be timed well and put forward good. But the main thing is, it's not a swing, it's a strike. Come down slow and strike at the basket instead of swinging your arm. And when you do that, it'll be easier to control your hand, and you'll be able to feel your misses instead of just swinging the disc and trying to just kind of guess where it's at. You'll be able to really see, like right there, I could tell that I was a little high right, didn't release on the right time, my timing was up. So I know that because my arm is slow, I'm not rushing anything, and I'm just trying to be very calculated with it. It's not, I always like to say, you're never going to rush in, or you're never going to wait into a mistake on the golf course. You're only going to rush into one. You're only going to run up to that putt and oh, I need to make this, and throw it into the cage. Sitting there and taking 3 extra breaths before you putt is never going to hurt you. So that's one thing that I really, really like to press on the people. If you step up to the putt and it doesn't feel right, step away. You might as well, just take a few steps back, gather yourself, deep breath, step back up. It kind of goes back into that giving up control, the gain control thing. Whatever you think is the best way to clear yourself before you go up for that putt is the most important thing. Another thing I like to touch on, it's kind of alignment. So like a lot of players, and if you putt like this, you can putt like this. It's just my personal take on it. If you're putting with your toe straight forward, you've lined your shoulder up here. My shoulder's pointed this way. It's not pointed at the basket. So like if I was to throw a backhand drive and I get to here, if I open up over here, my disc is going to go that way. I need to keep it down on the line. So when I'm putting, my toe's never here. It's always here. Because then, now my shoulder's pointed at the basket, and my full extension, when I push out that back foot, is going to be at the basket. So that's why when I jump straddle putt, you'll see me lined up like this all the time. that way, so my shoulders always point at the basket. When I come up off the ground, all my momentum and my full extension, if I release fully, should be headed towards the basket. So that's a big one. And another thing is mentally in a round, if I'm putting, and like say my foot's right here, and I keep missing right, maybe I take my foot, adjust it a little bit, and I make that next one. It might not have been the problem, but during my round, I've corrected that mistake. I've made that putt, and mentally it's something I can check off and maybe trick myself into getting back into a rhythm instead of continuing to miss putts. So there's a lot of things that you can do mentally to get over, because putting is all mental, as is the whole game. But when you get on the putting green, it's it's a very static motion. You're not moving a lot. When you're driving, there's a whole run up. Sidearm, there's a lot goes into it. Putting's up, down, and put it in the basket. So having a clear brain, I think, is one of the main things to making a lot of putts.
Yeah, and just always be confident in your putts. Like what Cam was saying, no fear, and you're gonna have a lot higher percent of make.
Any questions on the putting before we go into driving? Yes.
What are you doing as far as like a practice routine? I mean, are you for like your daily when you're not in a tournament setting? What are you doing? How many putts are you doing? Stuff like that.
So I'm in a transition right now, because I used to putt pretty much like before the last couple of years, and I became one of the better putters. I would putt like at least 4 to 5 times a week, at least 200 to 300 putts. I go put my music on it, a couple hours every day out there just putting. And then I got to a certain point where I felt like, I don't want to say mastered it, but I felt like I have my rhythm. I just need to go out, get my form. And for about last year and a half, I haven't practiced putt too much, because I don't feel I need to. Ever since COVID, and I've come back, I've been missing a lot of my putts, more than I've actually ever used to, even since my rookie year. So I've been getting back onto the basket a lot more, getting back out to the practice green, because I'm going through a mental loop right now myself, and just trying to bring back that confidence. So like every time I step up to the putt and make it, doing these clinics helps a lot, because it's bringing back my own, my own thought processes and what I need to be doing while I'm out there on the green, so I can make it.
Are you sticking more to circle one, or are you working circle one and circle two?
So I think they're different to me. So in circle one, I like to compare circle one putting to free throws in basketball. I feel I'm good in the circle for the same reason I was good at free throw shooting in basketball, is even when my brain's screaming no, I trust my mechanics. I can trust that my body's going to do it, even when it doesn't always feel right. Whereas I feel like outside the circle, it's more of I like to call it a game speed type thing. Like you might run like a 5 flat 40, but when you get in that, you put the pads and the helmet on, you get in the game, you got people chasing you, you might run a little faster. It's the same thing with the circle putting. Like you can practice their circle two putting. You can practice as much as you want, but I don't know if there's a rhythm or anything you can get into. I feel like once you get outside the circle, it's more of a feel, and just you want to take those circle one mentality into it, but it's more of a like I'm not going to get as frustrated from circle two as I will from circle one. And if I'm missing my circle one putts, that's like I consider those free throws. I need to be making those. It's something I go through my routine in my head, and it's in the basket. Whereas a circle two putt inside of 45 feet, I want to make most of them, but for the most part, as long as I'm getting a decent percentage of them, then I'm going to be pretty happy with what I'm doing from out there. Any other questions? I'm going to let Hailey talk about some backhand drives.
You just gotta let it out.
That's what it is.
It's irreversible.
With me transitioning over to the new disc, I'm still learning that bag.
We're not flipping the bar.
I just want to be Zach's partner.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry, Hailey. Sorry.
So I think for backhands, the most important thing about a backhand run-up is your footwork. The X-step is the most important thing. And I think, in my opinion, if you look at all the top throwers, Simon, Eagle, Drew, all of them, they all have slow footwork. James Conrad is about the only one that we know that completely runs up.
Okay, what's the difference between Conrad and anyone else who's good? 'Cause
Conrad,
he throws 14 extra steps than everyone else.
he uses his whole entire body, right? He uses all of his weight shift.
But I mean, he's running so fast that what does his footwork matter? Is what I'm getting at.
He's an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Just like Emerson would be with putting.
Yeah.
Okay.
He made it work, basically. So you all know what the X-step is, just this. So when you're first starting, what I like to do is I like to take a step with my right foot first, and then like lead me into my X-step. So then that way it gets my momentum started. So once you get to the X step, once you're right here, your feet never want to be parallel. You want them to be offset just a little bit. Not too much, but definitely not straight in line with the basket. So once you get to here, and once you're starting to like reach back, it's not a reach back. Do not reach back, okay? That's gonna completely throw off your weight shift and your momentum. You do not want to reach back. So what your reach back should look like when you come through here is you're just gonna slowly like toss your arm up, but you're not obviously gonna throw it up. You're just gonna put it up and then just pull through. And with your left arm is actually very important in my eyes. I think it's one of the most important things as well. You don't want your left arm behind your body. It's just gonna create wind drag or whatever. So you want to keep that tucked in. I like to keep mine right here. When you see Paul Macbeth drive, when he's like this, he almost punches down. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. But that way, it keeps you rotating, and it keeps the momentum going. Does that make sense? Yeah? Yeah. With your power pocket, it's different for everyone. I reach a little low because I come a lot I just pull a lot harder with my shoulder, which is kind of a bad thing, but we're working on it. You do not want to lead with your shoulder, and that's what I see a lot of people do. They try to pull with their shoulder and then move. You don't want to do that. When you get to your X step, you want to push your hips forward and then let your arm go. Does that make sense? It's just one motion from your legs up to your body.
You have most of your weight on the front foot at that point?
Yeah, so actually, if you notice, like if you watch any slow-mo videos of the pros, by the time they get to here, and the disc is like up here and like right here, and they're about to release it, their back foot is actually off the ground. Because their momentum has gone from here to here. So then they spin on the heel or the foot. Also, it does not really matter what you do if you plant on your toe and then finish, or if you plant on your heel and rotate from there. That's more of just like a preference thing. I mean, you're gonna roll your ankle a lot less going like this than this, but yes. Any questions?
Now, when Paul Macbeth punches down, do you think when he has a bad drive, he punched too hard?
Wow.
I have a real quick.
Does he have a bad drive?
Yes, once in a while.
Are you really thinking about firing your hip more than anything else? You think about your hip more than any other move?
Yeah, when I'm thinking of throwing,
your
I'm
shoulder
thinking
does
of
nothing.
just shooting my hips forward and then pulling through.
So your shoulder does nothing, right?
I'm not thinking about my shoulder.
Yeah, but I mean your
It
hips come
naturally
before your
comes through the
shoulder.
right spot
Your
when you're
hips,
leading
your
with your
hips
hip.
should be coming through first, and then your upper body should follow.
I think after
It
6
shouldn't-
years I would know this, right?
It shouldn't be like a two-step process. It should be all at one motion. But like what I think about is my hips and my footwork. It's just getting those forward and rotating.
Feet not parallel.
Correct. Because if you have your feet like this, you're not
all your power.
your hips can't turn.
Below yourself or backwards. I feel you out of balance.
Yep.
You can sit there and watch the videos all day at school.
I think I'm gonna fall on my face for that.
Make sure you try all this stuff today.
We're both gonna do some sidearm tips and take questions on that. I think sidearm is one of the biggest ones that people. Well, unless you're throwing a lot of sidearms, you're probably doing it incorrectly, which is dangerous and can hurt yourself. I have 7 holes in my arm from tearing cartilage playing quarterback, so I have to be very careful with my sidearm motion. If I screw it up and I do that again, I will be done. So the form is really important. I think the main thing, people come up to sidearms and they try to arm it, and that's the worst thing to do. If you try to like throw it with your arm, you're only going to hurt yourself. It's just going to torque your shoulder. You're going to feel it. It is not what you want. So when you're throwing a backhand drive, you don't use your arm. You come through, you engage your hips like she's saying, and then you follow through. It's like a pendulum or a trebuchet. It starts from the bottom, and you're sending everything forward with momentum. And it's no different with your sidearm. It's not your arm. Your sidearm is literally this. How fast can you take this hip and jam it forward? That's all your sidearm is. And then the biggest thing I like to teach people is this hip and this elbow. Imagine there's a rod here. This elbow cannot get away from this hip. If you get out here, you're going to lose all your accuracy and form. You got to pretend that it's attached here. Whether you're throwing a hyzer sidearm, flat, or Annie, you bring it up a little bit with Andy, but you still want to keep it tight. You have to imagine that rod is there and keeping everything tight and into your body. So when the hip comes through, your arm comes with it, and then the rest of your sidearm is right there. It has nothing to do with any of this. It's all your hip and your wrist, just like in your backhand. Your arm isn't doing anything but being a lever. Your hips and then your wrist is how you fire the disc. So it's the same thing with your sidearm. You come through, pop your hip, and then flick the wrist, and if you get the momentum and everything of the timing correctly, it should come out smooth and nice and, you know, on the line. Drive it down.
When you release, your hands straight up.
Palms up. It should be here. You know, if you're here or here. I mean, when you're throwing, you get more technical and you're throwing highs or flips.
Oh, yeah.
You want to release here, and you're throwing annies, and you're going to come up here. But if you're
There's no
throwing that
difference
flat, if
between
you're
your-
throwing the flat 90-degree sidearm, you want your palm up, come through.
Say you're straight in your S curve, you know, you're talking like over 300 on your flicks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
same release, right? Just
Yes.
basically disc
90
at that
degree.
point.
Everything's here. You just think about that 90-degree angle, and just try to keep everything locked. Like I said, just like with the backhand, it's all tight and everything's here. Same with the putt, you bring it in. Same with the sidearm, everything's very center located because that's where you're going to get the most stability. You know, you don't throw it out here because there's no, all your weight's out here now. You keep everything over your body. You keep everything over your front foot. It's not out of here.
And then also with forehands, you know, on backhands, there's also that follow through. It's almost the same with the forehand. It's just that you're not spinning your foot, so you can't like rotate to get out of it, but you still need that weight shift to follow through and push forward. Or else what's gonna happen is you're just gonna go hyzer, left, right, it's gonna be uncontrolled. So just make sure to get that smooth follow through as well.
The reason you're not spinning your foot on the sidearm is when you throw backhand, it's the shoulder you're throwing with. So if I'm throwing backhand, I need my shoulder pointed this way. Like if this is my line, my shoulder's on this line. And if I come up and open up over here, the disc is going this way. I have to drive the line. The reason you twist your foot and you don't on sidearm is because it's not the same shoulder. When I'm throwing sidearm, this shoulder is where my shot goes. So if I come through and I open up here, my sidearm's going that way because my shoulder's opened up. And that's why you're not twisting this foot, is because you're coming through and you're keeping it down on the line, and you have to keep it down. If you're twisting it, then you're opening up that shoulders like she's talking about. Whereas in your backhand form, you have to twist the foot so you can open it up after your release. You know what I'm saying? Whereas this arm's throwing the disc, so you have to rotate, whereas the arm is not throwing the disc. This one is. So when you come through and you're driving the line, you don't want that arm to rotate. I mean, eventually once you release the disc, you'll come through. But as you are throwing, you need that shoulder pointed on the line. And the same thing goes when you're throwing sidearms high. All you're doing is you're coming through and you're getting your shoulder up. This one's coming up and then you're swooping that way. So if you want to keep your sidearms down low and on that 90-degree angle, just make sure the left arm is staying down and you're driving your line. Any questions?
How do you grip your disc?
Grip on the sidearm?
Yeah.
The three main grips, I'll show you the one I use. I use what's considered like a modified power grip. So I take my fingers and I kind of overlap them like so. Stack grip. And then you have, actually I think this is the stack grip.
That's
This
stack,
is what
yeah.
like a Ricky would throw, where you take, the main problem with this grip is a lot of players will take their fingers like this and try to throw it with the side of their finger right here. What you need is your finger forward. So the pad of your finger is on the rim of the disc, not the side of your finger. See what I'm saying? You want it forward like that, so that it's not a stack like this, it's a stack like that. And you get in, and then you throw. Now I don't throw this way, so I'm not going to claim to have a ton of knowledge. I've always went with the power grip just because it's what's felt more comfortable to me. And then the third and final grip is a stack grip, the split grip, which I would never use for drivers. It's only for mid-ranges and putters, and it's just to stabilize the frisbee because the putter in the mid is a slower disc. So when you're throwing the sidearm, it has a lot more tendency to wobble because it doesn't have that beveled edge. So the split grip just gives you a little more, whatever's comfortable. You can have it wide. My split's a little more in, but whatever's comfortable to keep that disc on that plane, so it's not, putters and mids, when they're wobbling, you're wasting their energy. They could be flying, catching wind because, it's ducking down there. So those are the different grips. Each one has their own, the power and the stack. You can decide between. I would recommend the split if you're going to throw slower discs on the sidearm, but Did you have a question? Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the short version of the question is my short sidearms have been really consistent. 250 and under, pretty spot on. When I start trying to get more power on my sidearm, 300, 330 more, my sidearms have been really inconsistent. And what I was thinking is that I'm just trying to get more crank on it, and it's turning over on me more. And getting suggestions for being more consistent with distance sidearms.
Keep your run up slow.
Right.
Because if you keep that consistent, it's going to show you what's actually going wrong. Because if you're getting excited, I know like when my dad throws a really big forehand, his run up is definitely a little bit different. He starts to run up a little bit more, and then he throws like his whole body into it. But just make sure to just keep your footwork slow and the same every time.
Yeah, so kind of what she's saying, if I'm going for max distance, then I will come through and I'll kind of like throw my whole body in, but that's generally not how I throw a sidearm. That's just if I'm going for like super huge.
Right.
The main thing for distance, and when I started throwing sidearms, I used to just throw discs out to a field, so I'd have a stack, and I would just start throwing them back one step, kind of like you're talking about, how it's really easy to be accurate, you know, at that lower distance, and that's kind of how I started, was just one step throwing them, and so my run up still isn't very big. Like if I'm going for not a max distance, but you know, just below that, all I do is I kind of take a chop, and like, so if this is my normal sidearm, where I just take like one step and then throw. If I'm going for a little more distance, I just, instead of a step, it's a lunge. So instead of just stepping forward and I'm going big, I'll take that foot and stretch it out, and that way I can, you know, now I'm going from here to here instead of from here to here, where it's more compact in here and I can control it. And I take this foot, stretch it out here, and now I can really swing my whole body through and follow through on that.
The other thing I've noticed is it seems like I'm just getting more crank on the disc. I'm just getting more turn on the disc.
What it could be the discs too. I don't know what discs you're using, but if your form's getting better and you're developing more power, the disc you're using could just be too flippy.
That's what I'm
So it's possible you just need to like disc up to. I don't know what you're using, but Firebird's always a good one.
Right.
Because you know, even if it's too much for your arm to start, you can always just throw the ante on it, and it's just a good gauge because you're not going to get much more stable than a Firebird. And that's kind of like the standard Predator, whatever company you want to use, AT, Westside. But yeah, just an overstable 9-speed, I think, is one of the best discs you can get for the sidearm, at least to like learn it at an early stage.
Yeah, I have issues with rolling my wrist. I mean, you can ask Kyle. He watches mine. I roll my hand over quite a bit. It's like I try and stop that. It's like
Just keep it on the 90 and try and keep that palm up. That's the main thing, because when you're rolling, that means your arm isn't next to your hip. You're out here.
Yeah, because I do have a tendency to push that arm out quite a bit too. It's like I've been working on it this past year. It's getting better, but I mean, it's still, I'm having issues. I'm not having issues in the elbow or the shoulder. It's the bicep is where I'm having most of my pain at when I throw those.
That means that
You're going
you're
way
arming
out
it,
there.
and that's, yeah, you should not do that because you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
If you're getting pain in a bicep or a forearm, that means that because like I said, it should be your hips and your wrist, just like your backhand. So it's just the delivery of here and then here, and it's how well can you transfer that power from your legs to your hips and then through the flick of your wrist. And that's, like I said, just for the backhand. That's going to dictate how much spin, how clean it is, how far it goes. So
Yeah, I've been telling him that.
Yes, the prince is here. All right. I think the biggest thing for you would to be just try to think of that rod in between your hip and your elbow, because anytime you're rolling it, you're getting out of your pocket, getting it out here, and it's. But that means, I mean, if you're rolling, that means you're trying hard, which is good, you know. And another thing I really preach is that if you're comfortable with something, take anything that we can say and use it around your form, but don't necessarily change what you do just because, you know, it might be better. Absolutely, give it 3-4 weeks, completely change, try it out. But if you don't like it, what's comfortable to you is always good. Like there's things in my form I've never changed, and I've just adapted and used them into, you know, things I do now. So, and that's what makes disc golf unique. You can look out, you see James Conrad throwing, you know who it is. You see Nico throwing, you know who it is. You don't need to be right next to him to see that form and be like, oh, that's that person. That's what makes this game, I think, so much better than the regular golf, is that you look out there, and at least to me, it's all the same guy swinging. You know, when I see somebody putting or driving or throwing a pro, I can tell who it is, and I don't have to be 10 feet from him. So it's a unique game, and so I always preach to, you know, learn what you can, but don't ever get rid of everything you do. So.
Yeah, because when I flick, I can't do the 2-finger stack, 2-finger par grip. I do index and thumb only when I flick.
The 1-finger flick?
Yeah. So
I did it for a while, not as a professional, but I played amateur for 4 years. And I did the one finger flick quite a bit, but I don't remember much about it. So
For me, it's more
I would
for
assume the mechanics
accuracy.
are about the same. You know,
Yeah.
keep it in the same.
It's more for accuracy
It's a lot more
than
snap
yeah.
rotation.
It's more snap. It's more accurate. I sacrifice the power for the accuracy, so
Yeah, I will do that with backhands, like my 6 and 8 speeds in the woods. Instead of a power grip, I'll go to a control grip,
yep.
so that it, for whatever reasons, for me, it's much easier to control my window with a control grip on a slower speed disc. And so, and it also, what it does is it changes the flight. So like my leopard on a power grip, you know, thrown here is going to pop up, turn over, and it's never coming back. But with that control grip, it's going to pop up the flat and just push forward, and then maybe come back a little bit at the end. So I'm eliminating a little bit of turn just by changing my grip, because the rotations per second out of my hands can be just a little bit slow.
Yep.
So you can get a different shot out of the same disc just by changing your grip a little bit. But I think we're getting close to 5:30, if not a little bit past it. So we should probably get this dubs thing rolling, so we're not
Cool. Thanks,
pushing
guys.
daylight.
Thank you guys.
What's
Thank
this
you
for?
guys.